good afternoon. Welcome to a new episode of PE Forum. Today, we are delighted to welcome our esteemed guest, Mrs. Isabelle Kemlin. Isabelle is the Business and Innovation Executive at RISE Research Institute of Sweden. She is also the Vice Chairwoman of the board at the Swedish Data Center Industry Association, where she is very engaged not only from a Swedish perspective, but also on a Nordic and European level. Most recently, Isabelle was responsible for CBRE's business within data center solutions in the Nordics, and prior to this, she worked in several senior executive positions, including as CEO of mining company Conmine AB. Hello, Isabelle, and a very warm welcome to this Fireside chat. Our audience is very much looking forward to hearing your fascinating insights into private investments in the digital infrastructure industry, and particularly your perspective on the Nordics market.
Great, thank you for having me.
Perfect, so let's get started. Isabelle, you are very active in the global digital infrastructure industry with the focus of bringing efficiency on top of the agenda through research and innovation of sustainable solutions. So what role do you think that private equity plays or can play in bringing efficiency to these sectors?
Well, I think that private equity plays a dual role. It's driving financial returns while actively contributing to environmental sustainability in the digital infrastructure industry. We're really seeing that happening right now. But first, I think it's good so that we a little bit have the same definition of digital infrastructure, because it can mean so many different things. But as I see it, it's not just an enabler for business. It's now become a primary source for competitive advantage. It is the new bridge and roads that actually support the economy, in particular, the digital economy. And it's really a key foundation and enabler for the 21st century's economy. So it is the backbone where we actively can see how it interconnects physical and virtual technologies. And here it is maybe where it's different from the roads and bridges, because we definitely see that the services and the investments that are taking place, it's not that you just invest in a building or a data center. It actually is much more. It requires a lot more on not only from the provider side, but also from the investor side. But I will get into that. So I think from if we look at the data center, how we or the digital infrastructure, actually the data centers, as we at least in the industry sees it, it's the heart of the digital infrastructure, because we need to communicate. We made a mistake in the beginning calling things that it is in the cloud, because actually the cloud is not in the cloud. The cloud lives in houses, and the houses are the data centers. And I think I've seen some research where one person interacts with at least 40 data centers during a day, and that's quite amazing. We need to think about that when we now our things are happening in such quick speed. So I mean the investment in the data centers. Well, it's really, we see it's strategically for acquiring the investments in data centers from a PE fund perspective, where we also the companies are hoping to get some smart money. And I say smart from the perspective of bringing knowledge and help with driving operational efficiencies to optimize resource utilization and actually enhance the overall performance. So yeah, this requires something new and also a different knowledge. If we look at it from an environmental perspective, it's actually become a critical part of the investment equation for for PE funds. There are many that actually look into the requirements are there from an environmental, social, and governance standards. There are new standards coming that we will get into as well within EU that will change things a lot. Yeah, I mean the funds that are investing in the data centers are, yeah, they are going to be there for some time, and there are big trends in the world right now, not only from that things are a little bit more shaky, but also we really have to deal with the ESG questions as well. And we can see that in the requirements of from both the investors, but the customers and also the end users in the end. So yeah, working with solutions for actually also decarbonizing energy consumption and minimizing waste, and yeah, adopting to renewable energy sources to be able to contribute on both from an environmental and also finance performance.
Very interesting. And you touched upon the fact that digital infrastructure is fast becoming, one of the most sought after strategies for PE funds, and we will get into that. But before that, I wanted to ask you, obviously you are, very highly involved in this market. So could you give us some examples of future technical solutions that we are going to see going forward within the digital infrastructure industry?
Yeah, so I will give a little bit of some topics that we are actually dwelling into. So RISE, where I work, it is the Research Institute of Sweden, which is actually a state-owned research institute and innovation partner. And we work in so many different fields. But the area that I'm focusing on and the team is on the digital infrastructure. And we actually have a physical unique test bed, which was formed 2016. It's over 1,000 square meters, where we actually do hands-on tests and research together with partners. And they in the whole, what I would say, the value chain of data. So that goes from the energy company with companies like Vattenfall to the network with like Ericsson, Telia in Sweden, for example. And then the actual data center where we have some challenges with high density loads going forward. So we need to actually look at how to cool the servers. And there we have one of maybe top 5 in the world who is our research lead. So we do so many exciting things there. And then also, last but not least, how do we actually reuse the heat, where we work with companies like Alfa Laval. So if we look at different things that are going on in this unique test facility, and why do I say it's unique? It's actually because there are, of course, companies have their own research and research departments and test facilities. But this is a little bit unique. There is something similar, an initiative where different universities has gone together in US. And in Germany, it's like Fraunhofer is another one. But what we actually physically have is this build-up test bed. Yeah, we now see, since we are in the area of, if we look at what's happening here then. So I guess we can't go these 40 minutes without saying the word AI. But what is happening there? Well, I mean, if we're doing the AI, what is that? What is generative AI? So it's actually 2 things. It's actually when you actually do your calculations and you train you train your models. And for being able to train your models, you can do that in data centers that are on a distance, and it's not urgent that you need the information here and now. But when you actually do the calculations, when the applications are really happening, for example, let's take as an example, selfless driving cars. So then you need to really be at the edge, what we call the edge. You need to be very, very, very close to where the decision of that information is going to be taken. So there are two kinds of different places where you can actually have the data, either really, really close to where the car is driving, and then it's a lot of information and just one little piece is going to be transferred back to the car. And then you need to, but for being able to do this, you need to train the data somewhere. And that can be taken place in these big data centers. And for being able to do those calculations, now the actual servers are bigger and bigger, and not just physically, but how much compute you can do on these small chips. And on that chip today, the heat that is generated on like, it's not bigger than this. It's actually like a rocket motor. But in just a couple of years' time, it will be the heat flux. So the heat from that needs to be removed is going to be like a nuclear station. So then no longer is it possible to use air as a coolant, because air is not that good for cooling. What's much, much better is different kind of liquid. And so what we're doing right now is looking very much into thermal management, both because we do believe like it's going to be hybrid IT solutions. It will also be hybrid cooling solutions. So we are looking further into how can we cool with air in a smarter way. Then we have been looking at something called holistic cooling, when we actually control not the cooling to a set point by the cooling machine into a room, but actually look at it on where we really need to cool it, which is the servers. So how can we find a way of actually control the steering of those two systems together? So it's really interesting there on how we also then can balance the servers, because the servers have a sweet spot of when they are the most efficient. And it's not, as we think, at full speed, because if we think of when we drive a car, if you go full speed with a car, that's not the best for a car. It's probably at 70 or 80%. Then the car, it will be, sustainable in the longest period possible. There is this button of economic driving, and the same goes actually for servers. So I think that's something to also bring into this equation, and we've done that, and we've done some really good research on it and have papers on it. Then of course, yes.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yes. Then, of course, from a thermal management perspective of liquid cooling, where we look at both on chip, so how do you cool it on, like use the liquid on the exact chip, but also solution where you immerse the servers into liquid, where we have several test beds and are doing research. Then we're also looking into fuel cells for prime power, where we have been doing tests for over a year to see how that is, and got a lot of interesting data. And then from a sustainability and heat reuse perspective, we have been looking at life cycle analysis of data centers, and heat reuse applications and how to bring that into the industrial symbiosis. Then also on the power side, and there are several now coming into market ancillary services for the electrical grid. And what does that mean? Well, actually, the grid, the electricity grid needs to be balanced by a frequency. So as much power, as much electricity you put in, as much you need to take out. And sometimes, and then it really needs to be balanced. But if that drops, actually today, data centers, and that will be really true for the AI, so-called AI data centers as well. It's possible to turn off because the power to them, and then give it back to the grid actually. So that is not only from a safety perspective, but also from an enabler to stabilize our grid. And then finally, looking at actually edge. We are building up large-scale edge test beds, for example, with applications where we're looking at smart public safety in a city in the harbor of Luleå. And we're looking at smart recycling and waste management, probably in a city called Boden. And then smart agriculture automation at Ultuna, and also smart city traffic management in Skellefteå. So here we are really testing things, with getting actually the data. And I think this is it's a few of the areas where there is a lot of things happening, and the attention from all the big players are there. They do see that this, if we actually cooperate over the whole value chain, that's when we are going to reach the best results.
That is really fascinating, and thank you so much for describing those innovations that are happening. Given your in-depth knowledge and experience in the Nordic market, what do you see as the possibilities and the reasons and kind of the unique conditions that make the Nordics market so attractive and interesting from an investment point of view?
Well, I think it's important to remember that this is not just only about green energy, because we have green or carbon neutral energy, as we have a lot of hydropower and also nuclear power. And this in combination and with the relatively low prices of it, makes it, of course, which is a big part of your return on investment, depending on the energy is a big part of this equation. But I think what's important to remember is not just this that is of interest, because also because we were so kind of early. So the first hyperscaler, as in then Facebook, placed a big facility outside of their normal places where they're set, and they placed it up in the northern parts of Sweden in Luleå. What we could see out of that also is that the research and innovation has been just sparkling around that. And so we are also, like in Sweden, for example, and also in the other countries, but we have a long tradition of being highly both high tech knowledge. So we have had companies like Ericsson, we have companies like Nokia, and we have had companies that have been there for a very, very long time and been really early. And we also deployed 3G, 4G, 5G at an early stage, which actually, and here comes the beauty of this, we have laid the foundation of the digital infrastructure in a really, really good way. And this is that's paid back, because then we have also been able to do, with help of the tools, different tools. Nowadays, it's like AI or large language models, or different IoT. But what that actually gives is the applications. So what will we really be doing going forward with all this new technology? But without this digital infrastructure, there is not really a good chance of bringing the whole digitalization in a good way. So if I would conclude that also, it's we have talent and good knowledge, we have good research and innovation that is world leading. Sustainability is kind of also part of our DNA. We are so used to be. I talked to someone from the region, and we're like, why is it? But we have always been outdoors and been taught to take care of our nature. Then I would also say that it also have to do with what we will see now going forward is new regulation coming from the EU, and I think that will also show that all the good things that we are talking about, from being green or being sustainable, would actually map out in a very good way, and in black and white, in ink, actually show that the Nordics is a very favorable place to place your investments.
That is really interesting, and as you pointed out, we cannot talk about innovation and AI, of course, without talking about regulation. And you just pointed out that in the EU, the Commission has just launched an updated directive on energy efficiency, where the digital infrastructure sector is involved for the first time. So, could you tell us what does that cover, and what implications would it have on investments in the region of EU and, of course, in the Nordics?
Yes, so from 15th of September this year, it will be the EU Energy Efficiency Directive will also be mandated for data centers. This is a directive that had been there for some years already for other industries, but now it's going to include data centers. And what does that mean? Well, it will actually mean the purpose from the beginning of the EU Commission is to not only give its inhabitants, but also investors a tool to actually look at it from look at the data center business and data center regions and companies from a sustainability perspective. So getting a good understanding, not firstly, it's going to be on an aggregated level where there is a lot of measurements that will be published. And then secondly, of course, that will come with set points of the KPIs that will be measured to actually continuously drive this sustainability agenda, because overall we need to lower our energy consumption in some way, and how can this be done, and how is also the digitalization helping on this helping that on this journey. So the 15th of September this year, there will be things that we will all start to report on, but it's going to be for data centers that has a labeled capacity above 500 kilowatts per unit per house. So I think that's it's starting off. It's going to be the big ones in each country, as in data centers, and then going forward, the aim for the EU Commission is to lower that level, that CLIP level. We can see now that all different countries are starting to prepare and get ready for this. In Germany, they have already done it. And I think here it's interesting also because they've set, they are asking for even more information and already set requirements and even some fines if you don't fulfill the levels that they have set up. So then we come to what we will really be measuring. So things like the power usage effectiveness, so the PUE ratio, for those of you who are familiar with it, but it actually measures how much energy that is used by the data center infrastructure compared to the actual IT equipment. So then, of course, the PUE means that it's, for this, in this case, it's hopefully more efficient. But it's also, there are some challenges with this way of measuring, that which the industry is working very closely together with the legislators to find ways of, so we measure the right thing. And then it's going to be measuring the renewable energy factor, which measures how much renewable energy is used by the data center. So a higher renewable energy factor means a more environmental friendly data center. And then you have the carbon usage effectiveness, CUE metric, which measures how much carbon dioxide is emitted by the data center per unit of IT energy. And finally, also the water usage effectiveness, WUE metric, which measures how much water is consumed by the data center per unit of IT energy. So, I mean, these are all things that are based on certification and accreditations of the data center provider, and where they have built it on standards such as ISO standard, Green Grid, and others. So I think these are just a few of the things that will be measured. It's a long list of 25 different things, but I won't go through them all here now. But I think it's important to understand also that we're starting to measure things, and with that, everyone will get a better view of what's really going on, and who doesn't want better, foundation for material underneath for knowing on how to take really, really wise decisions.
That is really fascinating. And thank you so much, Isabelle, for giving us a broad overview of this digital infrastructure market that, of course, is fast becoming one of the most sought after strategies for private equity funds and for public pension plans. That has been really fascinating. We thank you very much for your participation, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you.